So recently I was on a flight and I came up with this idea to put together a list of lessons learned from my parents. And so I spent the rest of that flight cataloging lessons learned from my parents. And I know that there's a million lists like this out on the internet, and they're pretty much all the same. The thing that I thought was interesting here is that a lot of the lessons that I found myself going back to were really kind of more daily life, tactical kind of things, and then some funny stories. So I'm also making this in a video format so that I can post it, and then also so that my parents can enjoy it as well. And so anyway, I hope that you enjoy it. And Mom and Dad, this is for you, so I especially hope that you enjoy it. So the first lesson learned that I'm going to put into this list is a good example of something that you will not find in another list. And it's one of these daily life stories, and it comes from my father. It's a practice that he does regarding birthday cards and Mother's Day cards. And what he does is, after picking out the right card, he will take a pen and underline the meaningful sentences or phrases or words, sometimes double underlining certain words. And I've always appreciated that because it really does put on a personal touch to the card, and I've adopted that myself. I think that's a good practice. So this story is about my mom, and about a time that I came home from college one weekend, and she had something she wanted to tell me about, and wanted that she has seen on the news, and she wanted to make sure that I was aware of it. And the background to this is that my mother used to work in a pharmacy, and she worked there for 10 years, and this pharmacy was in a hospital, and so she learned a lot about the medical profession while working in a hospital. So on the news, my mother had heard about computer viruses, and she knew that I worked on computers a lot, and so she just wanted to make sure that I was aware of computer viruses, and that I should always wash my hands or maybe use hand sanitizer after messing with computers. And I tried to explain that it's not really, what a computer virus is. It's just kind of a borrowed term. And so she just kind of nodded and said, okay, well, you just be careful anyway, because, those computer viruses have been known to kill people. So the next lesson comes from my father and is about painting. And actually it's 4 lessons all rolled into to one here. The first lesson is directly from my father, then the other 3 are via observation. So the first one is that when you're painting a room, take the time to go get a little screwdriver and take off all of the electrical outlet covers and the light fixture covers, because that makes the job a lot easier and faster without trying to tape up all of those things. And then when the paint's dry, just go back and put all the covers back on. It just looks a lot better and it's a lot quicker. The second lesson is to never paint the house without first getting permission from your wife. And the third one is to
Never paint your house without first getting the approval for the color from your wife. And then the final lesson in painting is never paint the trunks of the trees in the front lawn without getting permission from your wife. So the next lesson I put in here is from my mother, and basically it was about not getting into a fight regarding her honor. So, this was first day of school, probably 5th grade or 6th grade, somewhere in there. And she basically said, look, boys will be boys. Boys are dumb. They're going to say things. They're going to try to instigate something or get you upset or emotionally involved into this argument to try to get you into a fight. And they may say your mother this or your mother's that. And, basically she said, none of that stuff is going to be true. And they're only doing it to get you stirred up and to get you into a fight. So don't fall for it. Just be smarter than that and don't get into a fight trying to defend your mother's honor because of something that some boy, said. And that was strange to hear at first because, boys that age are all about, you can't talk about somebody's mom. And for my mother to be the one to tell me this message really made me have to stop and think about it. And she was very determined and very passionate about, she did not want me to get into a fight, get in trouble at school, or get a broken nose, or lose a tooth or something for something silly like that. And she basically just made the point, do not, let them get you stirred up. Do not let them take advantage of you emotionally like that. And so, anyway, that was a good lesson to learn and something to pass on. So the next lesson comes from my father, and there's an old saying that sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness afterwards rather than to ask for permission. And in his sort of reduced Texas version of that is sometimes don't ask. And so sometimes you just have to do something. And in his perspective, the way that he explained it is as long as there's nothing wrong with it, there's nothing unethical. Sometimes the rules, get in the way. If it's not, applicable to the situation or whatever, sometimes you just have to do something without asking. And anyway, so you don't really like hearing that as a young person because you always want to follow the rules or ask permission or whatever. And you get burned a couple of times by somebody that's doing, following the rules in a silly way. And so I recall this one time that I was at a Sam's Club, and it was the changing of the season of seasonal products, and I desperately needed to get this item, and it was the last one. It was actually the display item because they were sold out. And this season was about to go out, so they were going to be replacing it with other stuff coming in for the new season, so it didn't really matter. And I thought about asking one of the sales associates if I could, get the display model. And as I started thinking, I was under such a time crunch to get this and get some stuff accomplished before some deadline or some people were coming over or whatever it was. And so I started thinking about it. I was like, if I ask a sales associate, they're going to either say no, and then I'm going to have to ask them to go get their manager, and then who knows, the manager, might be on lunch break or it might take them forever because they're busy doing other stuff. And, as I thought about it, I was like, look, the store has to sell the display item anyway. And I'm under a time crunch. I don't really have time to wait for this debate to occur. And furthermore, the display model is already assembled, meaning I don't have to take it out of the box and get the tools and take the time to assemble it and read the instructions and all that stuff. So I just didn't ask. I just took the display model right off the top shelf and just kind of put it down on the floor. I got the little paper barcode that for the display, and I just walked right up to the counter and handed them the barcode and paid for it and walked out the door. So it worked. Thanks, Dad. So the next two stories are about decisions that my parents made that I was a little bit too young to make on my own, or didn't quite see the value in it, and they kind of either did it anyway or really encouraged it. The first is my father buying me a computer, and I was probably one of the first kids in the state of Texas to have a computer. It was when they were just starting to come out into the mass market, and he had heard that this was important, it was going to be important in the future, and it was just a good decision to make. And coming from his perspective, my father worked on the railroad as a conductor, and he carried a metal clipboard around and ran a sort of a tight ship with pen and paper. And so it was something that he didn't really understand, and he asked me if I wanted one, because he thought that was a smart decision. And to me it seemed, as a kid, I may have been 10 years old or so, or 11 or 12, but it just seemed like an astronomical amount of money. It didn't seem like it was really necessary, because I didn't even really know what it was. And anyway, he went ahead and decided to do it anyway. And that proved to be a very smart decision. The second part of this story is when I was in high school, I had to pick electoral classes, and my mother encouraged me to take typing class. And I thought, typing, that's for girls, and sure enough, I signed up for the typing class, and I got into the class, and sure enough, it was all girls in the class. It was kind of a bummer. But I took the class and learned how to type properly and fast. And the more that things had become computerized, by the time I got to college, everything was on computer. So you did all of your essays on computer, and it was expected. And so I was one of the few people that wasn't pecking and poking on the keyboard. I actually knew how to type. And then taking that into computer programming and word processing and just everything that you do now with a computer. It's even hard for me to pick up a pen and write anymore. I mean, I can sign my name for a signature, but a lot of times it's hard for me to even, in cursive, you can forget that. I can't even do that anymore. So thanks for the computer and for encouraging me to take typing class. So this next segment is kind of more of a funny on my mom. So anyone who knows my mother knows that she loves little baby angels and cherubs, and that she has them all over the house. There's little baby angels, statues and figurines, little paintings, and in the car there's a little angel keychain. And so anyway, I jokingly told my father one day that if anybody ever came out with little angel, baby angel vitamins, that she would swear to the doctor that that was the only type of vitamins that she could take. So this next segment is really more of a funny on my father, in that when I was little, I was just learning how to swim, and we went to a swimming pool, and he, got in and was encouraging me to jump towards him and then swim the rest of the way. And I was a little bit nervous about how far away he was. But he told me not to worry about it. He also promised me that he wasn't going to move. And so anyway, I jumped in and I started swimming towards him. And then he started backing up slowly, making me swim further. And I finally got to him, and he picked me up and was very happy at how far I swam. And the first words out of my mouth was, "You moved," and he tries to tell me, "No, I didn't move. Look how far you swam." He's trying to be all positive about it. And I'm all, kind of got my feelings hurt because he moved. And anyway, he said, "No, I didn't move." And I said, "Yes, you did. I could see your feet moving." So I guess he thought I was swimming with my eyes closed or something. I don't know. But anyway, fathers knows best in this situation. So he knew that I could swim further, and that I just basically needed to prove it to myself. And he had to help me along the way by scooting back a little bit. So this video is about my mother and a habit that she has, or everybody has their own little idiosyncrasies, and she has one. Well, first of all, everybody who knows my mother knows that she's very frugal, and she keeps a lot of stuff. But she's also frugal in the sense that she's always packaging it and boxing it up and labeling it. And so one of the things that she does is that she will package things into like a little plastic container, and then get a bunch of those little plastic containers and put that inside of a Ziploc bag and zip that up, and then put that inside of a box, and then put that box inside of a slightly larger box. So it becomes kind of like those Matryoshka dolls, little Russian nesting dolls. There's one inside of another, inside of another. So this video is about my dad, and anyone who knows my father knows that he's a gun collector, has a passion for collecting guns, rare guns, and just is fascinated with that. And the thing that's interesting is that he's not a mathematician, but when it comes to guns and ammunition and stuff, you would think that he's a rocket scientist, because he knows like all the different types of gunpowder and the different grains, and down to the milliliter how much that will calculate into a certain projectile distance given a certain caliber of bullet, and all the science that goes with that. He knows that he's got that down. So this video is not so much a lesson learned, but something that I learned in how to better understand your parents and the decisions that they make. And basically if you can think about things from their perspective and from their life experiences, and kind of with
empathy, think about the decade that their childhood was in, the decade that their teenage years were in, and then their life experiences, because all of that helps explain, it helps you to understand the decisions that they make, and then you can better understand them. So with my father, he basically taught me just about everything, right? So from how to drive and driver safety, and how to hunt, and gun safety and fishing and punt, pass, and kick, and just everything, how to change filters, how to change a tire, how to install a ceiling fan, just all kinds of things. So, but the backdrop for this story begins my first year after college, the summer that I came home. And, I had been exposed to, so much at college, completely just blew my mind wide open, and I realized how much was out there, and just had an incredible passion for knowledge, and just wanted to absorb and learn as much as I could. And that was kind of my obsession. And I realized that there was a couple of things that my father hadn't taught me, that he knew a lot more about, and that was more stuff about auto mechanics and how to play a guitar. And so I expressed that, for me it was really more about legacy. I just thought these are things that my father knows, I'd like to learn them, and he would be a good teacher at these, and it would be something between us. But he really kind of dragged his feet on that the whole summer. And it got to be confusing for me, because I thought this would be something that he would jump on, and then it grew into frustration. And then later in life, I realized, as I started thinking about things from his perspective and his life experiences, and I realized about how important it was for him personally, for me going to college and staying focused on that. And I realized that that auto mechanics and learning how to play guitar. My father was in a band, so in the 1950s, like when his late teens, early 20s, and he, it was his band. He was the lead singer, played guitar, and I started to realize that my desire to learn how to play guitar for legacy reasons, and just for obsession of trying to learn things, was different than his perspective, that he didn't want me to be distracted. And if there's any place that you can get distracted with learning how to play a guitar, and joining a band, and then your grades start suffering, and I began to understand why he dragged his feet that whole summer on not teaching me those things. And then so the lesson learned is to really understand your parents from their generation, from their time frame, from their life experiences, and that will help you to understand some of the decisions that they make, and to appreciate those. And it wasn't until that moment that it all made sense, and then I understood that he was just doing what he thought was best for me, and then it completely changed my whole perspective about that entire summer. So that's my advice, is to understand your parents from their life experiences and from their generation.
So this next lesson is from my mother, and this is a lesson that is a little different. It's a little more solemn, a little more serious. And it's a lesson that she instilled in me over many years, beginning in grade school, of always being respectful of girls. And then that evolved in junior high and high school of, kind of the dating scene years of always being respectful. And, my mother was, smart enough to know that boys aren't the most intelligent creatures to begin with. And that, at that age, there's a lot of silliness, there's a lot of hormones, there's a lot of bravado. And, she never bought that as an excuse. And during that time, there's a lot more of, boys will be boys, or that it was acceptable. And for her, it wasn't. And it wasn't acceptable, and it wasn't an excuse. And, she impressed that on me during all of those years. And she always told me to be in control of that, and to always be respectful. And I'm very thankful for that, because it's become part of my character, and it's just second nature now. And because she started at a young age with that, and so I would encourage anyone to do the same. So this next lesson is really more of a short story, but it's about my father. He enrolled me in a baseball league, and I needed to improve my batting skills. And so anyway, he got tired of chasing the ball. Like, he'd pitch me the ball and then I'd hit it, and it was very inefficient. And so he came up with this, I think it was a very creative idea, of drilling a hole through a baseball. And then he ran, a rope through that hole and tied a knot on the other end of it. And he would take that baseball and swirl it around, and then I, could hit it. And he would do that over and over and over again. But we didn't have to chase the baseballs, which was cool. But it actually ended up being very good for my hand coordination, because I had a fraction of time to make adjustments to hit the ball, because you couldn't see it coming. So it made my eye-hand coordination very good. Batting skills were very good. But in addition to the creativity of that solution, I also remember that he was out there. And, I think about how sore it probably made his shoulder swirling that baseball around like that. And I know that he had rope burns on his fingers. So anyway, just if there's any lesson out of that, it's just to take the time and make the effort, because it's memorable. So this story has a little bit of my father's kind of Central Texas sense of humor injected into it. So when I was a kid, video games were popular and arcades were popular. You'd go with a handful of quarters to the arcade and spend a lot of time there. And then at various restaurants and cafes, there was always usually one tucked away in the corner somewhere. So we went to some restaurant, and I saw a video game and wanted a quarter to go play. So he gave me a quarter, and I went over to the machine to play. And when I came back, he asked me a strange question. He says, "Well, did you win?" And knowing video games, there's really no end to it. You just keep playing
on and on and on. The levels keep getting harder. There is no, there's really no end to the game that says, congratulations, you won. You just try to maximize and play as long as you can. And I started thinking about, did I get the high score? And I said, I didn't really know how to answer the question. And I said, well, yeah, I guess. And he says, no, you didn't, because the game got your quarter. So I think I'm going to wrap this up. Mom and Dad, just wanted to say thank you, and I love you. Learned a lot. And for anyone else that is watching, I told you this wouldn't be the normal list of lessons learned. So anyway, I also hope that it was valuable and that you enjoyed it as well.